Hi everybody, my name's Amy Smith and I'm going to share with you quickly a tutorial about bracketing. It's something I touched on last month. I showed how to merge in Lightroom a series of photos that were taken while bracketing and how to merge those. And then I realized I probably should explain what bracketing is in the first place. So that's what I'm doing this month. It's kind of reverse order, but we'll get it done, right? And we can refer back to last month's tutorial to see how the editing goes. And I'm going to touch on it again this month with this intro to the bracketing procedure and process. So first of all, on the back of your camera, I shoot Canon, and I believe on Nikon there is an actual button that says BKT for bracketing. So on my camera, I am going to go into my menu settings, and I'll find it here. There it is. It's on the camera icon on number 2, and it's at the top. It says expo.comp exposure compensation /AEB for auto exposure bracketing. And if you click on that, and then you will get a screen, and this allows you to then manipulate how many stops apart you want the photos to be. So in bracketing, what that does is it allows you to take a series of images consecutively, and the camera, based on how far apart or how many stops you put between each exposure, each frame, it will adjust the shutter speed for you. Say you're shooting a sunset and you're not sure exactly how you should set your exposure. Should I expose for the sky? Should I expose for, the foreground or the mountains in the background? What should I expose for? Well, with bracketing, it allows you to shoot consecutive frames of the same scene and get that range of from the darkest shadows to the lightest highlights, and and also in between. So you go to this menu setting, and you can then adjust accordingly. Typically, I always do 3 exposures. I think it can go up to, I don't know what the limit is, to be honest. I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry. But so anyway, once you figure out, I usually go like a full stop. I think in the example, I did a full stop. You can go in increments of the thirds, 1/3 or 2/3 or a full stop. So then always make sure, okay, you got it set, and then you just move on. Make sure you hit the set or the set button, and it will then show you the increments between what you have set. So in my shooting video, as I'm shooting, I show you some of the back of the camera and how I shoot and how it works. I generally use bracketing with a tripod. I also use the 2-second timer. And I repeat this later, but I do this 2-second timer because sometimes the shutter speed with the variance of stops that you program into your camera for your exposures, that shutter speed can get pretty slow. And if you're hand holding, that little bit of movement or the camera shake as you depress the shutter, even if it's on a tripod, that camera shake from depressing the shutter can give you some blur. So I have it on a tripod, I put it on a 2-second timer, I hit the button, the shutter button, and it will then beep down to the 2 seconds, and it'll fire off all 3 shots consecutively, and adjust accordingly for the shutter speed. So I demonstrate that in another later on in this video. I shot a different segment of me shooting a sunset. So hopefully that helps and is explanatory for going with last month's editing of a bracketed image to merge in HDR in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm going to show you on my camera the bracketing sequence and how I have it set up and how it actually acts when you're shooting. So if I show you here in the menu, it's under exposure compensation, auto exposure bracketing, and if you go into that, so it normally is like this, okay, it's on 0. So if you want to set it, I'm going to set it a couple stops. Here's 1 stop. You can go in thirds. So there's 1 stop. I'm going to go to 2 stops because I want quite a variance in the highlights and in the shadows. So make sure, I always forget to hit set sometimes. And I'm like, why isn't it working? So always make sure you hit set. So you can see right there, it's, whoops. So right there you can tell it's there. So here we go. So I'm going to use my touch screen to set focus. I want it really in the distance on the horizon. It's super hazy, so it's not the greatest day for getting a super clear shot, but I have my aperture pretty closed down so that I will hopefully might get some sunburst effect on the sunset this evening. I'm in Alaska and it's currently 10:15 and it's pretty bright still, so it's just it's the coolest thing ever out here. So anyway, gives you lots of ample time to get some sunsets when it's pretty. It's sprinkling a little bit. We've got a cloud over us, but it's I think there's just a lot of moisture in the air. That's why it's so hazy. But anyway, okay. So when you're doing the bracketing, it will take 3 shots, and you can either depress the shutter 3 times, or since it's going to potentially be a slower shutter speed and I don't want camera shake, I have mine set to a 2-second timer. So I'll hit the shutter, the 2-second timer will beep, 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 it'll go, and then it'll take 3 consecutive shots on its own, adjusting the shutter speed to get the exposure correct for the 3 different frames, with the 2-stop difference, brighter and darker. So I'll do that and you can just see and hear what it does. So I'm gonna depress, get my focus, and there it took 3 frames. So as you can see in this first one, this is the bright overexposed one. You can see in the I think you can see, yeah, you can see in the histogram, and in the blinkies, it's really overexposed, right? And that highlighted the brighter exposed frame. So there's that one. Now here's the underexposed frame, and it's really clipping on the shadows. You can see on the histogram, and the only thing you can barely see it's clipping is the actual sun. And then here is the middle of the road frame. So the only thing that's blinking and blown in the highlights is the sun itself, and maybe a little bit of the highlights on the clouds, and some of the shadows are clipped, as you can see. But we don't have any clipped shadows in this one. You can see it's not touching that edge. So when we process in Lightroom, is what I use, and we combine these and merge them in HDR, high dynamic range, it will combine them and get perfect exposure throughout, and then we can still tweak it with our regular finishing of our processing. Sorry, I'm kind of shaking. It's cold. I should have put a jacket on. Sorry about that. But anyway, that is a demo of using the bracketing. And again, on Canon, I'm shooting Canon. It is in the menu. I believe on Nikon, there's a BKT button somewhere on the back of your camera. So anyway, that's that. And I hope that is helpful and gives you some tips. Anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that's explanatory and understandable. And if it's not, don't hesitate to leave me a message in the comments, or a direct message, whatever works. And I can't wait to hear from you. I hope it works. Give it a try, and I'd love to see some of your images. All right, thanks guys. Hey everybody, I'm going to go through a really quick edit of how I put together these bracketed images. I did this previously with a different shot last month in a tutorial about merging the HDR merge, and I got to thinking maybe I should talk about bracketing first, which too late for that, right? Because I had already done the editing part. But so this month I'm back to show you the bracketing procedure in camera and how that works. And that is what I had showed earlier in this video. So here we are. I'm going to go through one more quick time to show what I do in post-production here in Lightroom. And generally I take it into Photoshop as well. But for today, I'm just going to take all three of my images, the different exposures, and merge them in Lightroom, and then we would go from there and do some further editing. But just for today's purposes, I'm just going to show you how I do the merge. And if you want to see go through the full edit with me, I will link last month's tutorial on the editing portion that was more in depth as well in the text of this post. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to grab all three of these images down here. As you can see, just looking at them, there's a very bright exposed, which is what's on the main screen right now. There's a darker image, and then there's one that's in between. So those were my three exposures. I'm going to go up here to Photo Merge, HDR. So I'm just going to click on that, and hopefully Lightroom, oh, it's very quick. I was going to say, my goodness, I hope it doesn't take very long. But so there they were put all together, and we're just going to say, okay, yeah, merge those things, get them put together, and it will come up on the taskbar down here in the thumbnails as an HDR image. So there it is. But first, before I show you that one, so here is the really exposed, overexposed on the highlights, as you see up here. They are definitely clipping or blown highlights here. As you can see, the red is highlighted. There aren't, although it's highlighted up here as I'm apparently clipping some shadows, it's a warning. It's not completely, there's no blue over here. That's how mine are shown, is there's no blue in the screen. Whereas right here, you'll see this is the darker exposure of the three. So the sun itself, of course, is going to be blown, but there are no other blown highlights in the clouds and on the water. But you do see the definite clipping here in these shadows in the dark exposure. And then here is the kind of middle ground. And as you can see, there are barely any black clipped shadows here. And again, the sun is what is blown. Barely any whispers of the clouds right here are blown as well. So there was a nice range on the histograms. See here, there's no blown except for the sun, but there are clipped shadows. And then the middle ground shot was pretty even. Again, the sun over here is blown, and the shadows, there's barely a couple clipped shadows. So anyway, we went to Photo Merge, Photo Merge, we did HDR, and we came up with this. Kind of a happy medium. As you can see, we've got a lot more detail down here in the foreground. There's a little bit of clipping going on, which we can even just go up here and pull those to the right, and we lose those clipping shadows. So the only blown area is the sun itself. We can maybe take a brush, clear those effects. Let's go to highlights and bring that down a little bit and just brush over the sun. And there, that pretty much takes care of it. So we don't have any more blown blown highlights really. See, it took it away here on the histogram. That brush did it. So from here, I would add a little bit of texture, which we're going to probably get some blown highlight back. I'm going to add some clarity to really make those leaves and the trees pop. Maybe not that much. Maybe dehaze a little because it is pretty hazy out. That's going to introduce some clipping up here. Again, we can raise those blacks and get rid of that clipping and just play with it and keep it happy. Keep those markers and keep those highlight or those blue markers and the red markers for the highlights and the shadows from creeping back in. From here, I would probably, I don't want to crop it really because my horizon is pretty good on the third. Let's look at that one more time. It's a little above the third, the rule of thirds line. I want to keep my trees on either side because it frames it nicely. I also, this little part of, we have a little shed in our backyard. So I'm going to take my cloning or my thing to get rid of and hide things over here. I'm going to take that and see what that does with it. I don't really want the brightness of this little thing over here, so I'm going to move that and see what we can get over here. It's still leaving a little bit of brightness right down here, but I think I can fix that, and it's negligible. It's barely anything to really mess with. But if I take a new brush and maybe bring down shadows just a hair and brush it on that corner, it takes any of that lightness away. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into depth and do a full edit on this. I'd really pump up the saturation maybe a little bit and play with the sky, the temperature, the tint a little bit and really bring out those colors. I would play with the highlights and shadows or the dodging and burning of the clouds in the sky. I might take it into Photoshop and do a color pop action. I'd probably get rid of some of these little chimney things right here on this house because those kind of distract me. The house itself doesn't bother me too much, but maybe I would take this and clone out that and put trees in it. But like I said, that doesn't really bother me too badly because that's the view from my house. So that's what it is. But anyway, the main thing I wanted you to get from this is how to take those 3 images that we got when we did our bracketing sequence. When we were shooting, we took them again one more time up. We highlighted all 3. We went to photo. We did photo merge, HDR, and it took all of those and made them into a pretty good starting point for the 3 exposures to be merged without even have to play with them much at all. So you can minimize some of the clippings, some more of the highlights that are blown with some brushes, with some of the sliders. So yeah, that's about it, guys. I hope that's helpful. And if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments or message me or whatever. Give it a go, play with it yourself, get on the menu in your camera, and try bracketing and see if it can help you get better exposed images in some instances when you're not quite sure what to expose for. You can kind of expose for everything in 3 to 5 different frames and then merge them and have the best of all worlds. So there you go. And thanks so much, guys. And I will put the finished, I'm going to mess with this a little bit more, and I will put the finished image in my post, and you'll get to see how that ended up looking. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Bye.